Study, come on Bible study, published on Psychology Today, survivors of childhood trauma are some 5,000% more likely to use drugs, attempt suicide, and suffer an eating disorder. When I was doing my studying, I found out that animals are completely different from us. When they go through a traumatic experience, they're able to shake it off. So when they go through something that causes them trauma, I don't know if you've ever seen a dog when something scares them, like they'll do the little shake. That's them shaking off the trauma because they know if they hold on to that trauma, they'll die. And unlike animals, we're unable to do that. In some course through history, we weren't able to adapt that capacity to rewire our brain to think, okay, let me cut that off or shake it off so that it doesn't bother me. A key example of this is when a war veteran returns from a combat zone, he may have vivid nightmares about the deployment, even though they're not actually there anymore. They're trapped in their trauma. Unconsciously, we may also find ourselves basing our relationships on our previous traumatic experiences. And this is called repetition compulsion, and we'll end up repeating traumatic events repeatedly. However, just because we may be traumatized does not mean that we must remain trapped in the trauma. Which leads me into my second point, traversing through the trauma. Oxford Languages defines traverse as traveling across or through. Uncovering and identifying our trauma is the first step in working through the recovery process. Now, just speaking from personal experience, one of the things that I most dealt with in my childhood was rejection, either from my friends or from family members. And they would label me. They would be like, sometimes they would say, I'm soft, I'm emotional. They would point out things that like, oh, Rex, you're doing things that aren't really manly. And that stuff would stick with me. I didn't know it back then, but I would push it to the back of my mind, and unconsciously it would affect me. And I didn't even realize until later how it impacted my relationships. So keep that in mind. According to a medical study by Dr. Judith L. Herman, the recovery process may be conceptualized in 3 stages: establishing safety, retelling the story of the traumatic event, and reconnecting with others. So I really connected with the last point because I'm so used to doing things on my own. But one thing I had to realize is that there's strength in numbers. And until we're able to recall those events and talk about them, and I guess really work through it for ourselves, that's when God prepares us and allows us to be surrounded with other people that have also been traumatized. And by teaming together in a group, we're able to help each other eventually get to the place that God wants us to be in our recovery. So, one thing that I also wanted to emphasize is, although we all have, we're all able to draw strength from others, sometimes we have to remember that everyone else's recovery process is completely separate from ours. What works for someone else might not work for you. If Apostle Roach, his way of dealing with his trauma is journaling, and I try journaling, it doesn't work out for me, I shouldn't get depressed and be like, oh gosh, I'm not going to be able to get over my trauma. No, you have to find something that works best for you. And one thing that I love about God is He'll always provide a way through and eventually out of our trauma. And as stated in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13, no temptation has overtaken you except what is common to mankind. And God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you are tempted, He will also provide a way out so that you can endure it. And I feel like this is a great segue into my third and final point, which is triumphing over trauma. So Cambridge Dictionary defines trauma as triumph, as a very great success, achievement, or victory, or feeling of great satisfaction or pleasure caused by overcoming. So I talked a bit about how rejection has personally affected me, and there was one instance way back at the beginning of 2018 that really was a truly traumatic experience. So I remember I'd gone back home for a winter break, and my father was dealing